Well, hi everyone, I'm Hudson. In this Approaching the Scene, we're going to talk about what to do with one of these. You come back from a shoot, maybe you're photographing wildlife or sports in action, and you just have scads of images. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to just quickly drill down to those images that you really want to spend time with and edit, and sort through all the other stuff without making a permanent decision about whether you're going to delete it or not until after you've got the edits done that you want. Approaching the Scene is a series of videos that I'm doing each and every week to kind of spark a conversation about all things involving visual storytelling. Photo technology, what's happening in the field with other photographers, capturing better images, editing those images a little bit better, and how one process kind of informs the other. It's a conversation I hope you'll join. You can send questions to me at questions@hudsonhenry.com. So that email address is questions@hudsonhenry.com. You can also go to www.hudsonhenry.com/ATS and submit questions there. I'll be taking questions at the end of this episode, and I'm going to answer a question about printing as well as another about photographing the Milky Way. So if you're enjoying this video series, I hope you'll click like and subscribe. With that, we're just going to delve in here. I'm going to do this particular video in Adobe Lightroom, and I'm going to kind of blend some screencasting with me talking to the camera. And I'm going to show you how I quickly and easily cull in Lightroom. If you're an ON1 user and you follow me because I teach an ON1 and ON1 Plus, the process is almost identical. And I just did a video exactly like this almost for the ON1 Plus community. And if you're not a member of ON1 Plus and you use their software, it's worth going over there, looking at it. It's this really cool sort of photo community, and I'm the year-round coach there and do a couple videos a month. So this video will be in the ON1 Plus feed. You can take a look at it right here. There's a ton of cool content. Not mandatory for these videos, but definitely something to check out if you're an ON1 user and you're not already in Plus. It's got a high value for the money that you spend to get in there. So let's jump in here. Again, the process would be almost identical in ON1, but I'm just going to load this card in. I'm sitting here in Lightroom with my big master catalog open, and I'm really kind of focusing on how I would do this if I'm on the road with my laptop. The process is really similar on my big desktop computer here in the studio. I transfer the files onto my big Drobo here, which is automatically backed up. Out in the field, I worry a little bit about backup. I've got all my photos on my card right when I get in from the field. Here I have a XQD card from my newer Nikons. Use these really fast XQD cards that I like using a lot. I worry if they may be the next Betamax, but for right now, they're working really, really wonderfully, and I love them in the Nikon D850 and the D500. But I have this adapter from my 15-inch 2018 MacBook Pro that lets me have a standard USB slot. So I have this XQD reader right here. And I have a few external hard drives plugged in, as you can see. I like, when I'm using Lightroom, to keep my catalog on a small SSD fast external hard drive. This one's made by Lexar, and it's a little 500 gigabyte, no moving parts, solid state hard drive, very, very fast access. And I put my entire Lightroom catalog on there. And when I flip over to working on my big computer, I just plug this fast hard drive into it, and the catalog's there. It's the same catalog I'm working on both machines. So I never have to worry about synchronizing any catalogs. I just work on one big catalog, and I keep nothing but that catalog on this little drive. So it's plugged in. That's running my Lightroom catalog. And then I have a little fast SSD drive, a Samsung one, another 500 gigabyte drive plugged into a USB-C port here. And then I have traditional 1 terabyte external hard drive here, and I'll show you why I have those two plugged in just a second. So I plugged in my card. It automatically pulled up this import dialog in Lightroom. And I'm telling it I've got a chosen location. If we look on the left, we've got source. The source is this XQD memory card, the Nikon D850 memory card. On the right is where it's going to go. And in the middle is all the images on the card, and whether I want to select all of them or just some of them. I've got them all selected. You can just click uncheck all or check all. You can see that there's 380 some odd photos in here. And I'm going to go up here into the file handling section and look at where I'm putting it. I'm putting it in my Samsung fast hard drives mobile photo library folder. That's a folder that I just use when I'm out on the road without access to my big computer's Drobo. It's just a storage site for the images that I'm working on while I'm out in the field on a trip. So I'm going to put those photos there. That's this little fast Samsung hard drive that I told you about. And I want to build minimal previews at this point. I just want little tiny previews. I'm just going to run through and decide which ones I'm deleting. I'm just culling to get down to those photos that I truly want to edit. I don't want to build any smart previews. That's going to take a bunch of time and processing power on a lot of images that I'm going to delete. And I am going to make a second copy as a backup. I told you I'm concerned about backing up. And I want that to go to this big external 1 terabyte hard drive. And I've created a folder in there called 2018 Aruba Backup. These are some images from out and about in Aruba and from some kiteboarding that I photographed in Aruba. Kiteboarding is one of those activities like any sport where you take a ton of photos and you delete the vast majority of them. You know, wildlife, sports, people in general, events, you wind up shooting thousands of images and just deleting the vast majority. So at any rate, when I'm out in the field and I'm working, I don't want to delete my memory card until I've got it safely stored all that data in 2 locations. So I make a backup, and when I import into Lightroom, I'm importing into 2 hard drives at the same time. And then I keep this little one with me all the time, and this one back with my computer wherever that's stored, if that's in the hotel room, if it's in the van, wherever. I know that stuff is in 2 locations, and 1 set of data is with me at all times. I'm not adding it to any collection. I am going to rename the files, and I have a template that I've created here in Lightroom that is essentially the year, the month, the day. So it starts out organizing my photos by date, custom text, a shoot name, and then a serial number, a 4-digit serial number. So that custom text for me is always what camera I'm using. Here it's the Nikon D850. You know, I shoot with both Nikons and Sonys and multiple cameras of both brands, so it's important to me to know which camera I was working with at a glance when I look at the photo's name. The shoot name is just going to be Aruba. I don't have to worry about any dates because that's built into the thing, and the first number should be 1. So there you go. That's how all the photos will be renamed. If I want to edit that kind of template, I can choose to edit, and once I'm editing, I can choose to save it as a new template. It's a real easy process. That edit key right there lets you kind of tweak things, create a template for naming files, and save it with a name. So real easy to do. As far as develop settings, in Lightroom, I've created some little import presets for different cameras. Right now, the last thing I imported was from my Nikon D500. That's not the preset I want to use. I want to go to my intake presets folder, and I have a preset created for the Nikon D850 for a flat profile. It's basically going to add that LUT, that profile that's flat, that emulates the camera's flat setting. And why do I want to do that? I want to do that so that it isn't compressing the dynamic range in the image to create contrast. I want to see all that dynamic range that's in that raw file from that Nikon tweaked Sony sensor that has so much dynamic range. That flat setting is going to give me the closest to accurate view of what that raw file looks like, all of the spectrum of tones that are in it. And I did that by just taking a D850 file of mine in Lightroom and Develop and just turning on that Nikon flat profile, that LUT, and just turning on automatic lens corrections and chromatic aberration correction, and then creating a preset that just only adds those 3 settings, and then I can activate that when I'm importing. As far as metadata, I want to choose my 2018 metadata preset. All that's going to do is it's a preset. You can edit those if you want down here and create new ones. All I do is in the data, I put my copyright information and contact information, and that I'm the person that created it, and I embed that in the file. And then I can add a keyword. So here I'm going to put Aruba, and I'll put kite boarding. It's something I do quite a bit of, so it's there. That's all I really need to do. And then I want to put it into a subfolder because I'm just putting it into my master library here, the mobile photo library. I'm just going to go ahead and put it into a subfolder called 2018 Aruba. It can preview that for me. It's going to go into the folder structure just like that. I go ahead, I want to make sure I only click copy up here. Sometimes Lightroom defaults to copy as DNG. And you know, you can have debates about DNG versus your native RAW files, but for me, I want to preserve the file exactly how my camera created it. And I don't think DNG is taken off as an industry standard well enough to embrace it to the point where I get rid of my original native raw files straight from the camera. I want to keep those exact files the way that the camera saw that information. So I just leave them as straight Nikon NEF files, the raw Nikon format or raw Sony format when I'm shooting with Sony. And I go ahead, I click import, and Lightroom's going to start bringing these images in and creating minimal sized previews of each image. It's adding it into my catalog over here, sorting all those and storing them with minimal sized preview JPEGs built for each of the raw files. And I'm going to pause it here while it brings in those nearly 400 files and builds the previews, because you don't need to sit and watch the little copy and import bar move across my computer. All right, so it's brought all these images in, it's cataloged them, it's built minimal previews for them, and I'm just going to now jump in and show you my really quick and dirty method for culling. First thing I'm going to do is hit the tab key, which is going to hide the panels, give me a bigger view. Second thing I'm going to do is just kind of scroll through them all, and I'm looking for images with my hand in them, or a black slide. And what that indicates to me is a series of images that are all really one thing. I always put my hand in front of the camera or my lens cap in front of the camera if I'm creating a panorama, or if I'm going to create an HDR images of differentially exposed images to blend into one wider dynamic range image, or if I'm creating time lapse and I put my hand in front of it before I start and I put my hand in front of it when I end that series. So I can see right here, you know, this series of images is a panorama. I remember creating it at Baby Beach. It's really obviously a heavily overlapped panorama. So I'm going to select all those images by clicking the first one and then shift clicking the last one. I'm just going to go ahead and right click, and I want to set the color label to be blue. I always mark all of my panoramas blue, all my HDR images yellow, and all my time-lapse images green. And then I'll just right click them one more time and say group into a stack. And so all those will sort of collapse into a 13 image stack here. And I know that panorama is taken care of. I'll scroll down through. I don't think there's any other panoramas or HDR images. This is sort of all 380 some images that came off that card. I don't see any more hand images. So I'll run back up to the top. Just a little quick thing I do first is looking for those hands. Those are just flags for me in the grid view. Don't accidentally cull out some piece of a larger whole just because the individual image doesn't look good. It's really a little red flag for me. So the next thing I want to do, I want to make sure I've got this filter view set up here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I want to tell it that I only want to see images that are either unflagged or flagged. I don't want to see images that are flagged for deletion. This is the flagged for deletion. I want to turn that off. So I only want to see flagged and unflagged photos. I don't want any of the other color or star filters on, just the unflagged and flagged images. And then what that does is the minute that I flag an image marked for deletion, which is the X key is the shortcut on the keyboard for Mac, I tend to use the arrow keys. I'll click on this first image and I want to go in and look at it in my loop view. And you know, not a compelling image. I took some images just kind of cruising down the road in my father's old Mercedes in Aruba, just kind of getting some street scenes, you know. Not a great image, not a great image. It's kind of interesting. I'll just move past it without marking it in any way. I'm just hitting the right arrow key. But the minute that I say, ooh, I don't like this, and I hit the X key, it flags it for rejection, and it just disappears. You can just see it's fading out of the background. This is nothing special, nothing special, nothing special. You know, I don't know what I was thinking. Rolling along here. Again, that's kind of interesting. Oh, I kind of like that. I'll give it a 1 star. It's kind of a snapshot-y sort of image. Oh, I like that one even better. Yeah, let's give that a 0 star. We can even delete it because I like this one better. So boom, and then I get to this scene at Baby Beach. There's 4 images that are really similar. I can just select all of them and go into my survey view, and I have, say, this one selected. You know, which one stands out to me? I don't like the position of the people in the background as much in this one, so I'll just hit X on that one. I rejected it. And as I do that, the other images get a little bit bigger. I think that I probably, you know, they're all almost identical. I'd say it comes down between these two. This one is a little bit brighter exposure, looks a little nicer, so I'll just X that one out. I still don't think it's anything special, but I culled it down to that one. Here I've got my hand. We can go in there, we can get rid of that image. Again, there's the other hand. We can maybe star this panorama as 2 stars. That's something I'd like to go back and look at. So my convention is 1 star is something that's sort of interesting. The X key for reject is something I probably am going to delete. I might never even want to look at again. It's out of focus, it's poorly composed, it just isn't interesting to me. 1 star is kind of a snapshot or an interesting image. 2 stars is something I want to go back and edit. I don't ever star anything 3 stars unless it just is mind-bending at this stage. I'm just putting the best of the shoot as 2 stars. You know, here this donkey walked up and I had a wide-angle lens in the passenger seat. It's an interesting sky. That image is all right. I like it. That one's better. I'm kind of left and right arrowing. So I've got this one, might be a 1. That one I don't like that much. That's a fun image. I might want to edit that. I'll give it a 2. This isn't great. This is a place that I really wanted to capture the sort of look of this place more than anything. I might give that a 1 star. It's kind of a snapshot. It was a place I really enjoyed kiteboarding. I just want to remember and sort of show my friends. It's not a portfolio image of kiteboarding. So I'm going through, these don't stand out to me. I'm just hitting the X key on them. Maybe I leave that one, maybe I leave that one. X key, I don't like the position of the kite. That one's kind of nice. I might give that 1 star. I'm just running through super quick, making fast decisions. And this process that I'm using, coming up off the water, it's sort of interesting. That one's better. I'm left arrow, right arrow, kind of look at the next image in this series of sports shots. And this one's a higher, you know, that one's better yet, a little better position. That one's much better. So maybe we'll star that one 1 star. Leave that alone. That's kind of fun. We'll just delete the rest. So I'm running through fast and furiously. I don't even see the kiter in this shot. It's not a great position. Again, you know, it's not great. I'm just literally making quick decisions here. That might be kind of fun. I'll leave it. Maybe make it 1 star so I look back at it at some point. This is clearly out of focus and nothing. You know, he's cut by the horizon line, out of focus. I'm making fast decisions about what to get rid of. And as I run through, you haven't seen me make too many decisions that are 2 stars, like I'd like to look at and edit later. You know, here's a series of images that maybe I want to keep this to create a GIF, you know, a little animation. I might want to turn this to video at some point. And it looks pretty good. As I look at it, there's a few that sort of stand out as I'm moving left and right. I think this one, this one, this one. So I'll just kind of run through those. I'm not going to delete any of the others, but you know, they don't stand out. I think once he's landed, it's kind of over. Let's see, that's someone different. Where does it start here? It's taking it just a little time to catch up. I think I could safely get rid of that one. So again, you know, this doesn't look like much of anything. I'm going to go ahead and just hit X on these. Small figure, not super well exposed. And I'm just running through, you know, if nothing stands out to me, that's kind of a fun one. That's getting kind of cool, but not great position. That one I'll leave. That one's not great. This is fun if I was to crop it. You get the idea. I'm running through, wow, that's kind of fun. I'm making decisions about, you know, is there that one I like, 2 stars? What might I want to edit as I go through? And literally it's this fast process. I hit the X key. The great thing is I'm not actually deleting it. It's just falling out of my view of the images because it's marked for later deletion. If I was to change my mind, I could always go back and look at those before I actually delete them. And I'll show you where that is in the process. So, you know, I've just gone through a few of these. I'm going to pause the video, run through the rest, doing exactly what I've been doing, and show you where I end up. All right, so I've gone through and I've marked all the ones that I just have no interest in editing or that just aren't that great an image as marked for rejection. I've rejected them with the X key. I've marked a few of them as 1 star. They're kind of snapshotty, or maybe they're kind of second best. They're interesting. And then I've put 2 stars on the ones that, hey, I might want to edit these. These might be good. And one thing that you'll really notice is I haven't gone through and I haven't chosen to start editing any of them. I haven't looked at them for focus. I haven't been checking what their histograms look like, what their black point, white point. I haven't gotten lost in the weeds, and I think that that's what a lot of people struggle with. I think they start going through and doing the culling process. They get one that they like, and you think, I wonder, you know, maybe I'll start editing this, and you wind up an hour later and you've only culled through 10 of your images, I think it's really important to run through and choose which ones do you really want to commit to spend time on. And you don't need to spend a lot of processing power in Lightroom building big previews of all of your images and waiting for previews to load. Just have those minimal previews set up and run through and cull it down. If you take a look here, I've gone from having 383 images to 95. I've marked more than 3/4 of these images for rejection. I'm probably going to delete those once I go through and do my edits and make sure that I have everything from this photo shoot that I want. I've only got 95 remaining, and if I choose to drill down and look at the ones that I marked as 2 stars, I only have 26 images, 26 out of nearly 400 that I'd like to take a second look at, and some of those I need to go through and really choose which one's the most important. Now at this stage, when I've only got 26 images, I'm going to select all those. I'm still here in the library mode in the grid view, and I'm just going to choose library, run down to previews, and I'm going to tell it build one-to-one previews for these selects. And Lightroom's going to go through, process, and build really high resolution 100% previews of just these ones that I've selected that I might want to edit. I'll jump back in and pick this up once that process is done. You know, I don't want to do that again for 400 images. I'll do it for the 26 as I run through and choose which ones to edit over another. That way I can look and check critical detail like sharpness and other things in those ones that really matter to me. All right, so now I have one-to-one previews of all these 26 images. You know, I didn't want to go ahead and render that and use all the processing power to do for all 400 when I culled it down to only 95 keepers and then 26 that I want to even think about editing. And so now that I'm in here, you know, I can run through and look at these images, and you know, I can see, you know, I think I like all 3 of those. Are they sharp? You know, you can zoom in because you got one-to-one previews. Yeah, we're razor sharp. And I can run through and sort of select, you know, this one isn't as great as that one. I can even cull it down a little further and knock those 25 images down to probably 15 that I want to edit. But I'm down to that level where, you know, I've got 2 stars, 1 stars, no stars, and a whole bunch marked for rejection. And once I go through and I edit everything, you know, I might find that there's an image that I really liked that when I was looking at the minimal preview, I couldn't tell wasn't actually critically sharp. And I might need to drill into those 1-star images to find one that's almost as good that is sharp, or even the 0-star images. And until I've got everything culled down and edited, that I know I've got everything I wanted from the shoot, I'm not going to go ahead and delete all the rejects. Once though I have done that, Lightroom's made it really easy. You can just hold down the command and delete, hit those at the same time, control delete for you PC users, and it's going to go ahead and it'll just bring up all of the images that were there to be deleted, that you've marked as rejected, and ask if you want to get rid of them. It's that simple. Just command delete, control delete for PC, boom, they're just gone. They're out of sight, out of mind. As you run through and you process these, you'll notice that I haven't used 3 stars or above yet. I do use 3 stars in my process. So if I've got an image that I've edited, you know, the best of my shoot are always 2-star images. Once I've edited those 2-star images, maybe a few of them are portfolio grade images for me, in which case I'll give them 3 stars. For me, 2 stars, best to shoot. 3 stars, sort of the best of my career. It's the stuff I want out on the website. It's the stuff I want to have out there representing me as a photographer. And I know I hear a lot of people saying, well, why don't you use 4 or 5 stars? You know, when I get home, my favorite images from the shoot are 5 stars. Well, you know, that doesn't really work for me because I need headroom to grow. And I think that, you know, when I look back at images that I took just 5, even 10 years, you know, 10 years ago, certainly, but even just 5 or 3 years ago, they're not as good as the images I'm creating now. And some of that's due to technology, and I'd like to think some of it's due to me growing as a photographer. And I hope that as I move along through my life, that continues to be the case. And so at a certain point, I'm going to need to differentiate which of my portfolio images are better yet, are the top of the top, those 4-star images, those limited edition images, my absolute favorites. And then hopefully by the time I get up into an advanced age, I'm going to need that 5th star. So I'm just kind of leaving headroom. You know, we all don't need to start out as A+ students. We need a little room to grow into that designation. So something I'd suggest you consider as well. So yeah, I'm just leaving myself a little headroom in the process. So I hope you can take this little method that I've kind of developed. I really developed it in the days of film. You know, you just, as you're going through those slides on the light table, you delete, these aren't good, these aren't good, these aren't good. Somehow it was easier with physical images. And I think it's too easy to just, you know, keep a whole bunch of images that we don't need in this digital age because it isn't taking any space in our cupboard or in our bookshelf. And so, you know, I still think it's really valuable to whether you use my method or whether you develop your own, get a method where you can drill down to those images that you really want to spend time on and edit without getting lost in the forest for the trees as you're culling through. So with that, I'm going to jump into a couple of quick questions here. Deborah asks a question: when photographing the Milky Way, what's the best way to get the full starbow, the whole starbow image? And by starbow, I assume you mean that kind of band of the Milky Way arced from one side of the image to the other. I've got an image that kind of is reminiscent of that. I'm going to jump in here to my kind of all of my panoramic images, and I'm going to go ahead and search for Mount St. Helens, one of my favorite. If I could just spell, maybe I'll just say St. Helens. Might be that I abbreviated Mount on some of them. It's not popping up, really. Huh. Well, let me scroll through. I have an image with a starbow that I'm looking for. I must not have keyworded it properly, but there it is. And this is an ultra-wide panorama image, which I'm going to get to in a second. It's almost 360 degrees of a night I spent up at the crater rim of Mount St. Helens. And you can see that just part of the image has this Milky Way starbow that you're talking about. And I think that in order to capture that, you're going to need to go with a time of year that's best. This was late spring, kind of early summer. It's still snowy up on Mount St. Helens. Looks wintry, but it's actually kind of getting into the edge of summer. And in the northern hemisphere, in the summer, is when the Milky Way is going to be high in the sky in the hours of darkness for you to be able to capture that starbow. So you're going to look for a summer scene. In the southern hemisphere, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be in, you know, that hemisphere's summer. So in our winter months in the northern hemisphere, you're going to be looking for a time of year when the Milky Way's gas cloud is high in the sky at night. You're going to look on an app like PhotoPills or Sun Surveyor. Sun Surveyor is my favorite. It works for both Android and iOS, and it'll give you an idea what azimuth, what compass coordinate the metal of the gas cloud is going to be and what elevation it's going to be at what time and whether or not the moon's going to be interfering or not. Really nice, easy to use software that I use all the time. And you're going to need an extremely wide angle lens to capture that starbow in one image. I'd think full frame at 14 millimeters it's going to be about what you need. Another way to think about it is to do a panorama like I did here, and you might even need to do a panorama if the starbow's high enough in the sky and arcing down that Milky Way gas cloud in the bow. So I'd think about doing a panorama, orient the camera vertical, move quickly, and the exposure you're always looking for the Milky Way, the exposure that I like to use is 30 seconds at 3200 ISO at f2.8. Now, if your lens doesn't go down to f2.8, you're going to have to recalculate either the length of the exposure or the ISO in order to compensate. You have to kind of move the exposure triangle around. But that exposure that I'm looking for is the equivalent of f2.8, 30 seconds, 3200 ISO. I hope that helps. So ask any follow-ups that you want, Deborah. Tony asks, hey Hudson, my question is what type of room light you use when you're examining prints. I have a calibrated monitor. Well, I think that's the first key to getting good prints is a well-calibrated monitor, and calibrate that screen dimmer than you would normally think of using it to view movies and web content. I calibrate my screens down to 80 candelas per square meter, 80 CDM squared. When I'm using my colorimeter, my calibration hardware, which is much, much dimmer than the full brightness. On my Mac screen, it's about half brightness. And that's going to help because prints aren't as reflective a bright surface as a lit computer screen. So images are going to look really dark if you edit them on an extremely bright screen to look. You kind of want to edit them on a little bit dimmer screen. And as you look through my images that I show all the time and what's up on my web galleries, I think you'll see, they don't look too bright Most people, I don't hear anyone complaining, wow, your edited images look too bright. But a lot of times when people submit images to me for review and for critique, and I'm looking at my calibrated monitor, they look really dim to me, and that's because I think you're editing on too bright a monitor. So as to the question of what to review the print, it really depends on where it's going to go. You know, if you're hanging it in a gallery, you should look into what color temperature that gallery's lighting is and light it the same as you're examining it. If you're hanging it in your home under tungsten or LED lighting, examine it under tungsten or LED lighting. In the studio, I have a lot of soft boxes that light the studio that I just hang up in the ceiling, and they're pretty daylight balanced lighting. I also have some tungsten lighting, and I can kind of choose which I'm going to proof it based on where that thing's going. Is it going in a naturally lit gallery with just window light that's open during the day? Well, I'm probably going to proof it in daylight lighting. Is it going in a tungsten lit room? I'm going to proof it under tungsten balanced lighting. It's all very subjective depending on where your final viewing is. But I'd say in general, somewhere between daylight and tungsten, evenly lit, no real bright, harsh highlights, not in dark shadows. You know, get it, but if you can light it the way you know it's going to be displayed, better yet. So I hope that helps out a little bit with those questions. I'd love for more of you to join in, add your questions to this conversation. You can send your questions to questions@hudsonhenry.com, or you can go to the website, www.hudsonhenry.com/ATS. And while you're there on the website, check it out. In the training section, there's lots of courses, training materials. I'm going to be adding a whole bunch more that I'm really excited about really soon. There's workshops, and I'll be adding 2019 workshops in there. There's a few spots left in 2018 workshops, but they're getting pretty slim. So cruise around in there. Send me some questions. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe. That helps out a ton, and we'll see you next time.